Our text is the Old Testament reading for this morning from the book of Deuteronomy. Thou shalt surely tithe all that thy fields produce year by year. The Ten Commandments are personal. They speak to us, each and every one, as individuals. Thou shalt not. And that's the way Jesus explained them in the Sermon on the Mount. You are the light of the world, and you are the salt of the earth. But there is another side to our lives on this planet, and that is our relationship to other people. We are not in it alone, nor are we soloists upon the stage of creation. It took two other people, a man and a woman, for us even to get here. And you and I are not the only ones with rights and responsibilities. And that is the turn that Moses takes in the verses before us today. The section is a mixed bag of odd rules and regulations, but they seem to have this theme running through them all. Share with others the bounty God has blessed you with. The first rule was this: thou shalt truly tithe. Set aside 1/10 of all that your fields produce every year. And thou shalt bring the tithe to the place where God has put his name. And there shalt thou eat of thy tithes of thy flocks and of thy fields and of thy new wine and oil. The people were to return 1/10 of all that God had given them. They were to bring their tithes to the sanctuary of the Lord where he had placed his name. They were to bring only the best. No second scraps, leftovers, lame, blind, torn animals out of the flock. And if they lived too far away to bring this amount, they could exchange it for money, make the journey, and then at the sanctuary buy the necessary offering. The tithe taught the people two things: to keep your head on straight, to think properly, to remember from whose hand you have come, and to remember from whose hand you have received your bounty. It prevented them from thinking that their own ingenuity or prosperity or industry had gained them everything that they had on their own. They were reminded of the hand from whom all blessings flow. And secondly, the tithe taught them to rejoice. Moses puts it this way: and there thou and thine household shall eat before the Lord and shall rejoice. They were to share in the sacrificial offering that they brought. They, their families, and the religious priests too. Everybody was to have a part in that offering. Now that's a lovely thing, and you do not often think of it, that you share in every offering that you have ever given to God. The very fact that we are here today is a sign of happiness, that we are still healthy and have a sense of personal well-being. And this church, with all of its buildings and furnishings on these premises, spiritual and material blessings for your family and for your friends, forgiveness and fellowship, in seasons of tears and in seasons of joy, at weddings as well as funerals. You have never given God a thing but what he has let you share in the return of it. The third year was an exception. In the third year, thou shalt keep all of the tithes within thy gates. For the Levite who has no inheritance in the land, for the stranger, the widow, the fatherless, that they may eat and be satisfied, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all the works of thy hand. Every third year, the tithes were not taken to the central sanctuary. They were kept at home to be used for the needy on the local scene, for the religious workers who had no inheritance in the land, for the alien and the stranger, the widow and the orphan. They were to have a share in God's bounty also. God didn't create this world for the favored few. God never plays any favor. Outside of these doors, there is all kinds of status and position and rank. Teacher and student, employer, employee, borrower and lender. But in the presence of our God, we are sons and daughters of the same Father, brothers and sisters in the same family of faith. At the foot of the cross, the ground is always level. There are no higher ups or lower types. Moses continues with something that seems radical to us. So much so that we wonder how it could ever have worked. And the Jews, in reality, never did make it work. But at least you've got to admit it was a beautiful idea. At the end of every 7 years, thou shalt cancel debt. Every creditor shall cancel the debt that his brother owes him. He shall not require payment of that loan, for it is the year of the Lord's canceling debt. Think of it. Imagine this. Every 7 years, the slate is wiped clean. All debts are canceled. All loans are wiped out. All bills considered paid. Everybody gets a fresh start. Everybody has a chance to begin his life again. Astounding. Now, the trouble we have with this is that Americans don't much know the difference between necessities of life and frills. We need food and shelter to survive. We do not need automobiles and television sets to survive. All kinds of exotic furniture and appliances of every imaginable sort. Like the company store that the coal mines used to run. You could keep a man in need in debt. Plunge him deeper into poverty. Dig a hole for him he can never get out of. Place an unbearable burden of debt upon his back that finally he breaks. And again, Moses' point is that God has not given this earth to the favored few. He wants His blessings given for all people. And He allowed for the fact that a man could have to borrow because of need. And He says that if you will do this, I'm not saying you should ignore debts, nor should you excuse debts. I'm saying you ought to cancel them. And the reason is simply because it is the year of the Lord's proclaiming. You are to do this because of God. You are to do it in honor of the one who canceled your debts, the one who taught you to pray, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And what are you going to do with the debts you've accumulated over your lifetime? I mean all of the unkind words and deeds you've done that you can never pay people back. And all of the kindnesses you have received from your mother's arms, from teachers and friends along the way. How are you ever going to pay them back? And don't you worry. Canceling debts is God's business. And you people will never come behind for doing the game God's way. No prosperous person yet has ever been injured by helping a needy brother. Moses is not asking for your charity. He's asking for your heart. A warm, compassionate heart. He continues, if there be a poor brother in any of your towns, don't you harden your heart and don't you shut your hand. Open your hand widely unto him. Give him sufficient for his needs and God will bless you. There's not a law in the world that can guard us against hard-heartedness and tight-fistedness. There is no economic system, political legislation, legal loopholes, bureaucratic red tape, welfare programs that can protect the people against hard-heartedness. There's nothing in the world that the poor can do against a tight-fisted brother. Lend to your brother in need, Moses is saying. Watch it. Don't say in the 6th year that the 7th year is coming. If your brother wants to borrow from you in the 6th year and you know next year all the debts are going to be canceled, you will turn the old evil eye on your brother. You will look at the property more than the poverty. You will see the gift you've given him as more than the brother who is in need. And then, when you turn away from the poor, and the poor turns to God, God will turn against you. That's why give generously, and not of a grudging heart, Moses continues. For the poor people shall never cease out of your land. Therefore I command you to open your hand widely to the poor, and to the needy, and to thy brother in the land. The next rule is nearly as strange. And if thy Hebrew brother or sister be sold unto thee, and serve thee 6 years, in the 7th year thou shalt set him free. Now a person may have to go into debt, and he may be unable to pay the debt. But you've got to understand that bills got to be paid. If you don't pay your bills, you're stealing. And anybody who doesn't understand that basic Bible teaching should shut up about all the other religion he thinks he knows. So the man then would sell himself. Go to work for that person for 2, 4, 6 years. But in the 7th year, you had to set him free. You had to set him free if a kinsman paid his debt. A redeemer, it's called in the Bible. But always set him free, you see, because you don't have the right to own any other person. Nobody can call another man his property, his personal possession to do with as he pleases. The sons of men belong to God. They don't belong to men. And set him free, not empty-handed. Thou shalt not send him away empty. but shalt furnish him liberally out of thy flock, and out of thy threshing floor, and out of thy winepress. And you remember that you were once a bondsman in the land of Egypt, and the Lord thy God redeemed thee. You were once down and out. You weren't all born with silver spoons in your mouths. You were once bondmen in the land of Egypt, and I loved you. I redeemed you. And I brought you out of captivity liberally, lavishly provided for. One other case. And it shall be that he shall say unto thee, I will not go. The guy served his 6 years, see? Now he says to the fellow, I don't want to leave. I've got it better living with and working for you than I ever had trying it out there on my own. That was acceptable. Then they stood you against the doorpost and bored a hole through your earlobe with an awl. And that earmarked you. You are now a member of that family and you belong to that house. And don't think that imagery is too weird, because St. Paul uses that. Claiming that he was earmarked for Christ. A servant of Christ, in the service of Christ. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to live and labor for the one who lived for and loved him. Isn't this odd? The great civil code of Moses does not begin with the bureaucrats in the capital city. The key personnel, the captains of industry. Moses begins at the bottom of the ladder. He begins with the poor and the needy, the defenseless, the downtrodden, the people who are not able to speak very well for themselves. He points you to your brother and tells you, write all the letters to Washington you want, but your religion doesn't begin till you start with your brother. And isn't that Jesus' way? Even his enemies had to concede that he never toadied up to the big shot. He was no respecter of persons. Jesus could take time for the little children on his lap, singling out the poor widow with her 2 mites, and never once turned away a stranger, an outcast, a mourner. Jesus was not even embarrassed to call the penitent thief on the cross a friend. And then entered the gates of paradise with his arm around that guy's shoulder. But then that's what he said. Inasmuch, one day, inasmuch as you have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, the hungry, the thirsty, the naked, the stranger, the sick, and those who suffer for the faith's sake, you have done it unto me, and you will never lose your reward. Amen.